Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Okay, so resuming from 1:12:12. Tataha sarva gunodrake shanukul grahodaye jajne vamshadhara pandor bhuya pandorivajasa. Thereupon, when all the good signs of the zodiac gradually evolved, the heir apparent of Pandu, who would be exactly like him in progress, took birth. So, as we had mentioned, this chapter is the birth of Maharaj Parikshit, and in these 6 verses, the um, uh, the Brahmanas are going to be giving the predictions of Maharaj Parikshit. So, at the beginning of the chapter, the sages had again asked Sutta Goswami about the circumstances surrounding the birth of Maharaj Parikshit. And Sutta Goswami responded by first glorifying the rule of Maharaj Yudhishthir and Maharaj Yudhishthir personally. And they had discussed that they had done so to indicate that Maharaj Yudhishthir is a qualified ancestor of somebody as great as Parikshit Maharaj. Or we could look at it the other way around, that Maharaj Parikshit would be a qualified descendant of somebody as great as Maharaj Yudhishthir. After that, the Sutta Goswami had described the circumstances surrounding his birth, which was a recap of what was discussed earlier on. Maharaj Parikshit being saved in the womb of his mother by Brahmastra, from the Brahmastra by King Lord Vishnu, and a little bit more details, a brief description of Krishna in the womb, and the small or the embryo observing Lord Vishnu in the Paramatma form, dispelling the effect of the Brahmastra. Now they begin to describe the from the astrological basis, they begin to talk about Parikshit Maharaj. So, when all the good signs of the zodiac gradually evolved, the heir apparent of Pandu, who would exactly be like him in prowess, took birth. So, Sutta Goswami in 6 verses is now going to talk about the actual birth of Parikshit Maharaj. So he says, Sarva Guna Udarke means that in the future, all good qualities, Sarva Guna. Udarke means will gradually evolve in Maharaj, in Maharaj Parikshit. And the reason that he gives is Sa Anukule Grahodaye. And because of the favorable influence of the stars at the time of the birth. So, Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he gives a very fascinating commentary on astrology. And as we know, in general, Prabhupada discouraged too much of faith in astrology and astrologers for devotees. But at the same time, he always maintained that astrology is a bona fide science. He would say that astrology is a bona fide science, but there are no bona fide astrologers around. So here Prabhupada very briefly, he tries to explain how does astrology work. So this, it's a mystical science, but nevertheless it's a science. So he says astronomical calculations of stellar influences upon a living beings are not suppositions, but are factual as confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam. Later on he says a man's destiny is therefore ascertained by the birth time constellation of stars, and a factual horoscope is made by a learned astrologer. It is a great science, and a misuse of a science does not make it useless. So, so if you notice, Srila Prabhupada says astronomical calculations. So astronomy is basically the science of measuring the position of constellations and stars and the different planetary bodies, which is more or less mathematical science. So he says astronomical calculation of stellar influences. So what is the science behind astrology that Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport? So briefly, the point that he makes is that by virtue of his past karma, a man creates his destiny. Now, this destiny is played out by the subtle influence of the stars. So the destiny is not determined by the stars, but the stars are the via media through which one's destiny plays out. So they are the machinery through which the demigods, the law of karma works. They work from inside out to some extent, but also they work from outside in. So from inside out, they work by giving a person propensities. So based on one's past activities, a person acquires a certain guna, and that determines the nature of the response. Outside in, it works through the influence of the constellation and the stars. And so Prabhupada, in the purport, he says the law of nature is so subtle that every part of our body is influenced by the respective stars, and the living being obtains his working body to fulfill his terms of imprisonment by the manipulation of such astronomical influence. A man's destiny is therefore ascertained by the birth time constellation of stars. Maharaj Parikshit, or even the personality of Godhead, appear in certain constellation of good stars, and thus the influence is exerted upon the body thus born at an auspicious moment. So the point that is made over here is that astrology uses the configuration of the stars to determine one's destiny, because they are the via media through which one's destiny actually plays out. So an example is like when students apply for college to admission, then they get what is commonly called as the short letter or the long letter. So generally when they get a short letter, it means that they're rejected. And when they get a long letter, it means that they're accepted. Now, the long letter, short letter in itself is not the cause of either the student being accepted or rejected. But by just seeing that envelope, the students will immediately know whether they have been accepted or rejected. So that letter is basically a via media through which a particular course of action has been communicated. So important to understand that astrology can only predict, but cannot change one's destiny. So it's a subtle but but important point to understand. So Prabhupada says that astrology is like a language that is describing either karma or lila in case of the advanced devotees or Krishna. Seeing somebody in a distance does not preclude his free choice. Seeing somebody's choices in the future does not make them any less of a choice. While seeing the position of a person in the future assumes a set of choices in the past, astrology overlays destiny and propensity to protect them and will typically speak in generalized terms. So one question that is asked is that if at the time of birth, and we'll see that in the case of Maharaj Parikshit, his whole future is laid out, which means that is Maharaj Parikshit helpless, that he has no free will, everything is already determined at the time of his birth? And the answer is no. But what astrology does is that it predicts the future based on the past, and it predicts the particular choice of the free will that will be exercised based on the propensity. So both these things are determined by one's past activities and past desires. So essentially, it is just the science of reading what has already been determined. It is not, so people with little intelligence will confuse this with that it is actually determining it, but it is not determining it. It is just reading what has actually been determined. So Prabhupada says the suitable arrangement of astral influences is never a creation of man's will, but is the arrangement of superior management. So Prabhupada is making this point that sometimes or very often astrologers will also promise to change your future for you. So they will say that I see something going to happen in the future, bad health or some kind of difficulty, but if you do this, if you give me money and I will do this, and your future will change. So Prabhupada is cautioning against that one cannot change the arrangement of astral influences. And the example of that is of Ravan, that Ravan wanted his son to become immortal. And him being an expert in the Vedas, he determined a particular combination of the planets, which, if anybody is born in that combination, would become immortal. And then because all the planets were under his control, he forced all the planets to be in that position at the time of the birth of Indrajit. But just at the time of the birth of Indrajit, Rahu, he stuck his foot out and kept it into a different position. So the effect was opposite. So Prabhupada says that even great people who try to engineer this the effect of the stars have failed. In terms of Maharaj Parikshit, the astrologers are reading what they have understood from the current planetary configuration. So Prabhupada in the purport, he goes on to say the samskars of the school of Sanatan Dharma are highly suitable for creating an atmosphere of taking advantage of good stellar influences. So Srila Prabhupada obviously is preaching in his purport. One may question that if everything is predestined, then why we do Garbhoda Samskar? And Prabhupada says that we do it because in order to attract a pious soul to the womb. Okay, so we'll do the next verse. 112:13. Tasya pritamana raja vipredomya kripadabhi jatakam karyamasha vyachayitva cha mangalam. King Yudhishthir, who was very satisfied with the birth of Maharaj Parikshit, had the purificatory process of birth performed. Learned Brahmanas, headed by Dhaumya and Kripa, recited auspicious hymns. So the verse makes some important points. So the first point that is made is that uh, uh, King Yudhishthir, he had the performance of the purificatory rituals. So these are the samskars. And Prabhupada again, he lays emphasis on the importance of samskar, that literally speaking, samskar means impressions. So these are subtle impressions that are left in the mind by the performance of rituals that are prescribed in the Vedas. And different scriptures have different number of samskars, but typically Shodash samskars are considered prominent, 16 samskars, and they begin with the Garbhoda samskar, which is before conception, intent to have a child. And amongst Vaishnavas, they're all connected to Krishna. So Garbhoda samskar in the more Karamkand form is a little different, but amongst Vaishnav, Garbhoda samskar involves chanting of 50 rounds and taking permission of Guru Maharaj and getting the blessings of the devotees. And then there is the Pumshavan samskar, which is for the health of the fetus. Then there is the Simantayan samskar, which is parting of the hair and what is called baby shower. Then there is the Jatakarnan samskar, which is what is being celebrated, the birth of the child. The Namakaran samskar, which is giving the name. Nishkraman samskar, which is the baby's first outing. Anaprashan is eating grains. Chudakaran is the haircut, first haircut. Then Karnaved is the piercing of the earlobe. Then Vidya Aram is the child beginning to study. This is study at home or read. Upanayan is taking shelter of a guru and entering into a gurukul. Then Vedaram is beginning the study of the Vedas and the Upanishads in the gurukul. Then there is the Keshanta, which is for boys, which is the shaving of the facial hair. And Ritu Shuddhi is for the girls when they enter puberty. Then Samvartan is graduating from school. Then the Vivah Samskar, which is the wedding, and then the Antayeshti, which is the death ritual. So amongst the Vaishnav, generally this Shodash samskars are there. Even they're not all 16 are followed. Anaprashan is kind of popular. That is done. Garbhoda is done, and Upanayan in some form is done. Vivah samskar is done. It's kind of interesting. I was observing that right after Vivah samskar, the next samskar is the Antayeshti samskar. Is the funeral. Nothing in between the two. So Srila Prabhupada makes this point amongst for the importance of samskars, and then he also makes the point about the importance of those who are qualified to perform these samskars. So Prabhupada says in the purport that all the samskars of purificatory process are not mere formalities or social functions, but they are for practical purposes and can be successfully performed by expert Brahmans like Dhaumya and Kripa. Such Brahmanas are not only rare but also not available in this age. And therefore, for the purpose of spiritual upliftment in this fallen age, the Goswamis prefer the purificatory process under the Pancharatrika formula of the Vedic rites. So the Pancharatrika is again a very ancient process that simplifies the Essentially, these are Karam Kand. These Shodash Samskars are Karam Kand. But what the Pancharatrika does is that it simplifies them and connects them to Krishna. So the Pancharatrika school of thought and the Bhagavad school of thought, they combined to become the Vaishnav school of thought. So the Vaishnav is a relatively, and this is more from the theological perspective. The Vaishnavism evolved later on and is a blending of two very ancient philosophies, the Pancharatrika Vidhi and the Bhagavad Vidhi. Both of them have their focus on Krishna. The Pancharatrika Vidhi was blending Karmakand into worship of Krishna, and the Bhagavad Vidhi was spontaneous love of Krishna. So the Vaishnav combined the two and basically goes from the regulated worship as given in the Pancharatrika to the spontaneous worship that is given in the Bhagavad. So Srila Prabhupada also notes that it's interesting to see that one of the priests who is performing the ceremonies for Parishad Maharaj is Kripacharya. And if you remember, Kripacharya had fought on the side of the Kauravas. He was actually one of the person who participated in the killing of Abhimanyu, the father of Maharaj Parikshit. He was also one of the person who, along with Ashwathama, had participated in the killing of the other sons of Draupadi. But despite all this, he was given the position of the priest of the Pandavas. And later on, when Maharaj Yudhishthir, he leaves for sannyas, he actually entrusts Maharaj Parikshit to Kripacharya. So the point Prabhupada makes is that the Brahmanas are liberated, and as having the position. So he says the great administrators, kings, and emperors were always under the guidance of learned Brahmins like Kripacharya, and thus were able to act properly in the discharge of political responsibilities. Okay, next verse, 14. Hiranyam gam mahi gramam hastyashvan nrpatir varan prahadat swanam cha viprabhya prajatirthe cha tirtavet. Upon the birth of a son, the king, who knew how, where, and when charity should be given, gave gold, land, villages, elephants, horses, and good food grains to the Brahmanas. So, as we have discussed many times in the past, that the dharma of the grahasthas is to give in charity. That is the only ashram that earns money. All the other three ashrams are dependent on the grahasthas. So the grahasthas, their ashram dharma is to give in charity, especially on occasions like this. One should give as much as they can afford. Prabhupada in the purport says that the administrative demigods and past forefathers of the family come to see a newly born child. And such an occasion is specially accepted as a proper time of distributing wealth to the right persons, productively for the spiritual advancement of society. So Sutta Goswami gives a glimpse into the munificence of Maharaj Yudhishthir. So he is giving gold, land, villages, elephants, horses, and good food grains. And what would the Brahmanas do with all the charity that they got? So they would keep only that much that they needed, and they would give the remaining in charity to other Brahmins, who would again keep as much as they need and give it in other Brahmins. So of the 6 characteristics of a Brahman, 2 are Dan and Pratikriya. So Patan Yajan, yajan, dan, pratikriya. So dan means receiving charity and pratikriya means giving in charity. Prabhupada also mentioned that the word tirthavit is significant because Maharaj Yudhishthira knew the right time to give in charity to the right persons. So as we know in the 17th chapter, three kinds of charities are mentioned in the mode of goodness, passion and ignorance. And charity in the mode of goodness is one that is given to the right person at the right time without any expectation of returns. Passion is that is given grudgingly, expecting some recognition, and ignorance is that is given at an impure place at an improper time. So Maharaj Yudhishthira knew well to give charity in the mode of goodness. Verse 15. Tam muchur brahmanastushta rajanam prashiryanvitam esha yasmin prajatantau urunam parvavarshabha. The learned Brahmins, who were very satisfied with the charities of the king, addressed him as the chief amongst the Purus and informed him that his son was certainly in the line of descent from the Puru. So the tushta or the satisfaction of the Brahmins was because of the act of charity, not so much because of what they received, but because it was the right thing to do. So in the chapter Bhagavad Gita 17th chapter verse 13, it is said vidihina mastratranam mantrahina madhokshinam shraddha virahitam yagyam tamsam parichakshate. That any sacrifice performed without regard to the direction of the scripture, without distribution of prasadam, spiritual food, without chanting Vedic hymns and remunerations to the priest, and without faith, is considered to be in the mode of ignorance. So anytime a Brahman does any activity for you, then you're scripturally obligated to give charity. Otherwise, it becomes nishfal. It becomes in the mode of ignorance. So previous verse talked that Maharaj Yudhishthira knew the right thing to do, which means that he knew that at this time the right thing to do is to give qualified Brahman charity, and the tushta or the satisfaction of the Brahmanas is recognizing this quality in Maharaj Yudhishthira. So the Brahmanas refer to Maharaj Parikshit as Asmin Praja Tantau Puruna, that he will be a descendant of the Purus, and they address Maharaj Yudhishthira as Pauravrashva, the best of the Puru dynasty. So why they are calling, so they are drawing this connection to both Maharaj Parikshit and Maharaj Yudhishthira to the Vamsha, that they are both descendants of the Puru dynasty. And why they are doing this, they will explain or will come out in the next verse. 112:16. Devena pratighatena shukle samstham upeyushi rato vanugraha arthaya Vishnuna Prabha Vishnuna. The Brahmana said, this spotless sun has been restored by the all-powerful and the all-pervasive Lord Vishnu, the personality of Godhead, in order to oblige you. He was saved when he was doomed to be destroyed by an irresistible supernatural weapon. So the Brahmanas are saying, Samstham Upayeshi, that his destruction was inevitable. Samsthan means destruction. Upayeshu is that it was enforced by the invincible Brahmastra. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that he translates this as, though the pure dynasty of the Puru was destroyed by unavoidable destiny. But what saved Parishad Maharaj? Anugraha Arthaya. That this is the mercy of Krishna. So Anugraha Arthaya, that by the force of the mercy, even though Maharaj Parikshit lost his body because of the invincible Brahmastra, it was restored. So they say Rata, Rata by Lord Vishnu. So, so Anugraha Arthaya is one of the Anubhavs that Krishna displays. So we had earlier on read about Anubhavs that typically come amongst the devotees. But Krishna, of course, also has rasas. That's how the devotees have rasa. So Anugraha Arthaya, which is Anugraha Arthaya means the obliging mercy of Krishna. And the Anubhav, I'm sorry, so this is the Anubhav of Krishna. The Vibhav, of course, was the pleas of Uttara. And specifically in this case, the sages say the Vibhav is Maharaj Yudhishthir, because they say that in order to oblige you. So that was the impetus. And the way it manifested was in terms of the Anugraha Arthaya. So in the previous few verses ago, Srila Prabhupada had talked about astrology, about how karma determines. Now this is an example of where karma is wiped out by Krishna. Because the Brahmastra struck Maharaj Parikshit and destroyed his body. But then there is Krishna karma. Krishna karma is whatever Krishna wants. And that is why we see this interplay between karma and Krishna karma in the life of devotees. So Prabhupada in the purport says, the child Parikshit was saved by the all-powerful and the all-pervasive Vishnu, Lord Krishna, for two reasons. The first reason is that the child in the womb of his mother was spotless due to his being a pure devotee of the Lord. The second reason is the child was the only surviving male descendant of Puru, the pious forefather of virtuous King Yudhishthir. Okay. Next verse, 112:17. Tasmanamna Vishnurata iti loke bhavishyati na sandehu mahabhaga mahabhagvat mahan. For this reason, this child will be well known in the world as one who is protected by the personality of Godhead. O most fortunate one, there is no doubt that this child will become a first-class devotee and will be qualified with all good qualities. So now the astrologers are beginning to predict the future of Maharaj Parikshit. So they Bhavishyati. So they are now talking about what is going to happen in the future. So they say that because he is protected by Lord Vishnu, Rata. So Rata means protected, Rata also means restored. Same thing. That his body was destroyed and restored by Lord Vishnu, protected by Lord Vishnu. So one of the names of Maharaj Parikshit is Vishnu Rat, that one who was protected by Lord Vishnu. Then they also predict that he will be famous as Mahabhaga. Mahabhaga means most fortunate. Mahabhaga also means lucky. And one who has a great, who has a lot of good fortune. So they say that he will be Mahabhaga, Mahan. And Mahan is that all good qualities will be there. He will be known as a great person because of all the good qualities. And then Mahabhagavata, that he will become Prabhupada says, a first-class devotee of Krishna. So Prabhupada in the purport, because this term Mahabhagavat is introduced, Prabhupada in the purport, he briefly talks about the three kinds of devotees. And so I'll also touch upon this. So this is covered in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhilila, chapter 22. And there actually two kinds of, uh, uh, what's the right word? Two kinds of classification of devotees are discussed. One is Adhikar and the second is Bhagavat. So by Adhikar, the gradation is Kanishtadhikari, Madhyamadhikari and Uttamadhikari. And by Bhagavat, the gradation is Prakritya Bhakta, Madhyam Bhagavat and Mahabhagavat. So very briefly, we'll go over the characteristics of these three. You're all familiar with it, so I'll go over it quickly. So first by Adhikar. So Adhikar is also, gradation by Adhikar is also explained in Nectar of Devotion, 3rd chapter, that Kanishtadhikari has weak knowledge and weak faith. Madhyamadhikari has weak knowledge but strong faith. And Uttamadhikari has strong knowledge and strong faith. So that is based on Adhikar. So Adhikar is eligibility and Bhagavat is realizations. So based on Adhikar, we have these three gradation. Based on realizations, we have Prakrit Bhakta. So Prakrit Bhakta is described as one who has some knowledge of the scripture, who follows the regulative principles, but he does not know how to deal with other devotees. Specifically, he is not able to distinguish between advanced devotees and not advanced devotees. So he is not able to conduct himself properly in terms of dealing with other devotees. So he's considered to be on the more or less on the material platform, although he's trying to advance. So such a person is called Bhakta Praya or a Bhakta Abhas or a Prakrit Bhakta. So next is Madhyam Bhagavat. So this is an intermediate devotee, and the intermediate devotee, he shows love for Krishna. He is friendly to all devotees and is merciful to the neophytes and the ignorant people, and he neglects those who are envious. So the big difference is that the Madhyamadhikari is able to make a distinction between the devotees and act accordingly. That that he is friendly towards those who are less advanced, and he rejects those who are ignorant or envious, and he shows he has more love for the more natural love for the personality of Godhead. And then the Mahabhagavat is one who sees everybody in relationship to Krishna and who sees Krishna in everyone. So he considers everyone to be more advanced and himself to be most fallen. So the essential difference between an Adhikar and a Bhagavat is that Adhikar is eligibility and Bhagavat is realization. So Adhikar is what you're qualified to be, and Bhagavat is the stage at which you are. So that is why the Bhagavat represents the mature stage of an Adhikar. So when somebody is an Uttam Adhikari, then a Madhyam Bhagavat is like an Uttam Adhikari, because an Uttam Adhikari is now eligible to become Am I saying this right? Madhyam Adhikari is the Madhyam Bhagwat. Madhyam Bhagwat is an Uttam Adhikari. So the explanation is that having attained the Madhyam level, the person is now eligible to become Uttam. So he has attained the Madhyam level and now his Adhikar is for the next level. So Madhyam Bhagwat is considered to be an Uttam Adhikar. Okay, so I'll stop at this point and see over the last 6-7 verses if you have any questions or comments. So most of these verses in this chapter have very, very short purports. A lot of the verses do not have any purports. So they are kind of self-descriptive verses.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, in terms of this astrology, right? So um, it's so when they are, so they are not. You're saying that they are not exactly predicting. They're basically just like you know telling you um, the. I mean, they're not basically. It's just what is going to happen. They're just like they're just reading out. Um, but when they give like mantras to chant and things like that to like nullify the effect or minimize the effect of certain planets, how does that work then? I mean, does it even, so does it not work? Does it all um,
So, so as long as it's bona fide, it does work, but it's all anchored to the law of karma. That essentially everything that is happening is because of the reactions to your past activities. And there are two ways in which these activities can be either reduced or nullified. One is by Praishchit. So this is explained by Sukadeva Goswami to Parishad Maharaj at the beginning of the 6th canto. So one is by Praishchit. So think of it this way, that because of the previous karma, there is some suffering that is due. And if you're able to voluntarily undertake that suffering, then the suffering happens on your terms, as opposed to when it would happen in its due course of time. So that is why most of the prayashchit is some kind of austerity. It's either fasting or giving away your wealth, or different kind of austerities are are there. Fasting, of course, is the most common. Fasting and charity, but there are other kinds of austerities also, not generally followed in the age of Kali. So that is one way, and the second is by kripa. Now again, this is not Krishna kripa. So uh, uh, karma is also transferable. So karma can be taken by others, karma can be given to others. It's exactly like money in your bank. So when so great personalities, they are able to nullify your karma by their own good karma. So when somebody gives so we see in historical that there are people who don't have children. They go to the sage and they say, "Give us a benediction," and they say, "So be it." Now they were not destined to have a child, but what the sage does is, on the basis of their own piety, they give that ability to the child. So they transfer their own piety over to them. So that is the process of mantra upasana. That by pleasing, so mantras are generally attached to either a demigod or they're attached to great rishis and sannyas or sadhus. So when you sincerely chant those mantras, the presiding deity or the rishi of that mantra gets pleased, and so they basically nullify the karma. Bhakti Purushottam Maharaj often says that um, uh, everybody guards their piety very jealously. So that is why it is very difficult to get these kinds of benedictions. The demigods are very much aware that the piety that they have is holding them in their heavenly kingdom. But many times they're obligated to give benedictions. They reluctantly give it, but they're obligated to give the benedictions. But it's essentially uh, a form of transaction that happens. So those mantras and all that, they're bona fide as per the scriptures. But Prabhupada's point again is that the science is bona fide. Perhaps the practitioners are not that bona fide.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Obeisances. In the case of devotees, we say that when we dance, we clap our hand, we chant the Maha Mantra, and then also through initiation process, when the Guru Maharaj, give initiation, he take your karma. That means this is another way as well.
That's why we say that for devotees, their happiness and suffering is because of Krishna karma, because their karma, so to speak, has been taken away. But they still suffer. They still grow old. They still have what appears to be karma. It's just that the source is different. That it's coming, instead of coming from their own activities, it is coming from Krishna. And really speaking, the purpose of karma is to purify us. So that is why we see that many times we say that when sufferings happen in the life of devotees, is because that maybe there was more suffering coming because of some past sinful activities, but still still in some form the suffering is given because that suffering was there for purification. Only that in this case, that purification is helping them make devotional advancements.
It's lessened. The karma is reduced.
So we would like to think so. The karma is reduced, but on different occasions, it's been said that the Krishna gives karma as per his desire. So he may increase it also. But whatever he does, it is to improve our spiritual journey.
Isn't it like bhakti negates karma, Prabhuji? Bhakti completely negates karma, right?
Yes, so the same point was made by Sharang Prabhu, that the cycle of karma is negated by bhakti, but what we enjoy and suffer, which appears like karma, is coming from Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, one more comment. We say that Lord Vishnu, no, Hari is the one who takes away everything. We have seen in the life of devotee that they have accelerated not karma, but they get things taken away, and they have to surrender quicker to Krishna.
That is true. Sometimes you see a lot of suffering in the life of devotees. It almost looks like lifetimes of sufferings have been compressed into a few years. And you're right. It's just them, Krishna burning away mountains of their previous sins, and the devotees making quick advancements on the back of those sufferings. Paramatma Prabhu?
Yes, I was listening to your explanations on astrology. It was really interesting. I wanted to ask a question, and Mataji asked the same question, but I heard you mention that Garbhadan Samskar is to attract a pious soul to the womb. I'm just wondering if but performing the Garbhodan Samskar guarantees that the child born grows up, as a devotee and, be a devotee, so to speak. Because I'm asking this because I've known of cases where the Garbhodan Samskar was done, very nicely, but the child turned out to be just ordinary. And on the other hand, a child takes birth under ordinary circumstances, and he grows up to be a devotee.
Thank you, Prabhu. Good question. So, so I guess empirically we do observe that there is no guarantees that Garbhoda Samskars may result in children who are not devotionally inclined, and vice versa. At the end, all these samskars are basically creating an environment that the soul may take advantage of. So as parents, even though we may not perform, we may not categorize it as samskars, but when children are growing in our house, so we try very hard to create an environment that is conducive to spiritual growth. We set examples by our own lives. We encourage the children to chant, follow Ekadashi, etc. Some children, when they grow up, they continue to do so, and many children do not. So it does not negate the process per se. The only point that it makes is that at all points, the jiva has free will. That we can create an environment that is conducive, like putting a kid in a good school and good teachers, good class friends. It's to help the child do well in studies. If the child avails of the facilities, they will become good students. If not, they will not. So free will can never be taken away. All this is just to create an environment in which, if the child chooses to exercise the free will, it will be easier for him to go in that direction. I was having a discussion.
Just a follow. Just to follow up on that, we hear this statement always, Kalo Sudras Sambhava, means that everyone born, at least in this age of Kali, are born as Sudras, and what makes the difference is training, right? So, one can take birth under whatever circumstance, but I'm thinking that it is the appropriate training that will make the difference. Whether the proper samskar was done or not, if the child is trained and guided properly, along bhakti principles and good Krishna conscious upbringing, that'll make the difference. I mean, I was just thinking along that line.
So when we read statements like Kalo Shudra Sambhavate, so these statements are to be understood as statements that are defining the general characteristics of a yuga. You can make the case that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was also born in the age of Kali. Now, obviously, he's not a Shudra. So when statements like these are made, they talk about the general principle. It does not mean that regardless of what you do, the person born will be a Shudra. Garbhoda Samskar is highly recommended by Srila Prabhupada. And again, the reason that he gives is that it attracts pious souls. The point that you're making is also completely valid, that one cannot just do Garbhoda Samskar and then just expect everything to happen automatically. It has to be followed up with proper training. And most important of all, and this is the point, since I have a son who's now 25, but he was pretty much born we were starting in Krishna consciousness. So we went through this journey ourselves. The single most important thing is to be. We can say all we want. We can teach all that we want them. We can make them memorize shlokas, but ultimately what they learn is what they see. So the most powerful teaching that we can give to the children is by becoming exemplary devotees ourselves. Now, even that does not mean 100%. I was having this discussion with the Mataji, who does child child psychology as a profession and is also a devotee. And then she was making this point that many parents have this expectation that the children should become pure devotees. And then she was saying essentially those parents are taking a position greater than Krishna. Because Krishna wants us to become pure devotees, but he cannot make us devotees. He himself is waiting for us to take to the process of devotion. So when we say that we want our child to be devotees, we are taking a position that even Krishna has not taken. Has not been successful in making us devotee. And now what we are saying is that we want to make our children devotees. So it is a covered form of arrogance. And the humble position would be that we practice our own sadhana to the best of our ability. We create an environment that is most conducive for the children, and then we hope for the best.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So if there are no other questions, we'll go to the next verses. So this is 112:18. Shri Rajuvacha Apyesha Vamshayan Rajrishin Punya Shlokan Mahatmanaha Anuvartita Svidyashasha Sadhuvadena Satmaha. The good king Yudhishthir inquired, O great souls, will he become as saintly a king, as pious in his very name, and as famous and glorified in his achievements as others who appeared in this great royal family? So previously the Brahmanas had said that Maharaj Parikshit will be known as Vishnurat, one who was protected by Lord Vishnu. So Maharaj Yudhishthira now inquires that will he be as pious as his name? So name being Vishnuratha. Will his character be commensurate to the name that is given to him? Will he protect others just as he himself has been protected? Will he be famous and praiseworthy? Yashasha sadhu vadena. And how famous, how praiseworthy? So Maharaj Yudhishthira establishes a point of reference. He says, Vamshayan Raj Rishi Maha Atmana Anuvartita. That will you follow the great souls, saintly kings who appeared in this dynasty. So, interesting point to note is that in the previous verse, the sages had glorified Maharaj Parikshit as Mahabhagvat. After that, there was no need for Maharaj Yudhishthir to ask any more questions. So when you find out that your child is going to be a Mahabhagvat, a first-class devotee of Krishna, then time to say Hare Krishna and walk away from there. But we see that Maharaj Yudhishthir, he is asking questions that seem to be mundane. That will he be as great as the the Puruvamshis. So Prabhupada explains that he was happy to learn from the learned Brahmanas that by astrological calculation, the child would be born as a first great devotee of the Lord. And more confidentially, he wanted to know whether the child was going to follow in the footsteps of his forefathers. So this is just the mood of intimacy. The mood of intimacy is that one wants to know as much details as possible. So this is not negating the position of Maharaj Parishit as Mahabhagavat, but it is expanding on it. That tell me more, tell me more. So it's not a Maharaj Yudhishthira said, don't worry about him being a Mahabhagavat. Tell me, will he be as great as his forefathers? What he's saying is, in addition to him being a Mahabhagavat, tell me more. Second point that is also made is that Maharaj Yudhishthira is a Vaishnava and a king. So as a Vaishnava, he is Paradukh Dukhi, and a king, as a king, his duty is towards his praja. So he also wants to know that will Maharaj Parikshit, in addition to being a devotee of the Lord, also guide the citizens of his empire towards spirituality. So in the mood of a preacher, he is asking, will he continue to preach and take other souls also back to Krishna? Okay, next verse. Partha prajavita sakshat ishvakuriva manavaha brahmanya satta sandhascha ramo dasharteryata. The learned Brahman said, O son of Pratha, this child shall be exactly like King Ikshvaku, son of Manu, in maintaining all those who are born. And as for following the Brahmanical principles, especially in being true to his promise, he shall be exactly like Ram, the personality of Godhead, the son of Maharaj Dasharath. So, previous verse, Maharaj Yudhishthira had asked if Parishad Maharaj would be like the previous kings in the dynasty. So, the Brahmanas respond by saying that all those qualities that made those kings famous, they already exist in the child, but specifically they glorify two qualities. They say that he is Prajavita. Prajavita means that he is a maintainer of the people in his kingdom. So this is the Kshatriya principle. The Raja, that he is a king. The king maintains the people in the kingdom. So this is the Kshatriya principle. And then he says Satya Sandha. Satya Sandha means that he will be true to his word, true to his promise. So this is glorified as a Brahmana principle. So the word of a Brahmana is never untrue. So they're always true to their word. Whatever they say happens. So essentially what Maharaj, what they are saying is that Maharaj Parikshit will be a Raj Rishi. That he will be a king, a Kshatriya, who will maintain the people, and like a Brahman or a Rishi, he will be true to his word. So we also see in play over here, and we'll see that trend in the rest of the verses, what Jiva Goswami had previously described as Kaimutyanaya, which is using an established reference point to glorify a less known reference point. So here Parishad Maharaj is glorified with respect to Maharaj Ikshvaku and Lord Ram. So he is glorified to Lord Ikshvaku in terms of being the maintainer of the praja, and glorified with respect to Lord Ram as one who is true to his word. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about both Ikshvaku Maharaj and Lord Ram, which I won't go through because for one, you all know it, and second, it's given there in the purport. So in the interest of time, I won't go through them. And I think that's something that I will do in subsequent verses also. So again, following Kaimutinai, Sutta Goswami or the Brahmanas, they will compare Maharaj Parikshit qualities with some great personality who is famous for that quality. And what Srila Prabhupada typically does is that then he will give a brief biographical sketch of that personality. I won't go into that because of the reasons I mentioned, because of time, and they are already there. And in all likelihood, you already know those personalities. So another interesting point to note is that Maharaj Yudhishthir had asked if Parikshit Maharaj can be compared to the ancestor in his lineage. He said, Esha Vamshayam. So Esha Vamsha means in his own lineage. So the Puru Vamshis, as we know, are descendants of Maharaj Yayati, who is a descendant of moon god. So they are Soma Vamshis. But the two personalities that are mentioned in this verse, Maharaj Lord Ram and King Ikshvaku, they are both Suri Vanshis. So one way to understand this is that the qualities in Maharaj Parikshit will be so great that they will exceed all those that have appeared in his own dynasty and will be comparable to the ones who are great in across all dynasties. So Lord Ram is upholder of his word across all the Kshatriya Vamshas. The same thing for Maharaj Ikshvaku. So he's talking about that the Brahmanas are implicitly saying that his qualities will exceed the qualities of the ancestors that appear in his own Vamsha. Okay. Next verse. Eshadata saranyascha yatahaya anushna shibi yasho vitanita swanam doshyantir eva yajvanam. The child will be a munificent donor of charity and protector of the surrendered, like the famous King Shibi of the Ushinar country. And he will expand the name and fame of his family, like Bharat, the son of Maharaj Dushyant. So these two personalities are from the Somvamsha. And so previously he was glorified as one who will be famous for maintaining others and keeping his promise. Now he is glorified as one who will be charitable. Data. Data means donor actually. Literally word is donor, charitable also. Lord generally meant with my Lord, and Sharanya as one who protects those who are surrendered to him. So again, Prabhupada gives a brief history of Maharaj Shibi, the ruler of the Ushinar kingdom, and also the son of Ushinar. And he gives a brief biography of Maharaj Bharat. So Prabhupada mentioned there are two Bharats that are famous. One is the Bharat, that is the son of Dushyant and Shakuntala. Shakuntala is the daughter of Vishwamitra and Menaka. And the other is the Bharat who is the son of Rishabdev, who has the famous deer pastime associated with him. So so Prabhupada opines that the kingdom, the earth planet was named after Bharat, the son of King Rishabdev. But he says even the Bharat, who is the son of Dushyant, was famous for his strength and chivalry. So it is also okay to compare him in terms of expanding the fame of the family. Okay, next verse, 112:21. धवीनामग्रनीरेशा तुल्यश्चार्जुनयोर्द्वया हुताश इव दूर्दर्शा समुद्र एव दुष्ट्रः. Amongst great bowmen, this child will be as good as Arjun. He will be as irresistible as fire and as unsurpassable as the ocean. So the king is generally strongly in the Ishwar Bhav. So he is in the Ishwar Bhav because he is actually the protector. So just like the Ishwar is protecting the jivas, the king is protecting the praja. So Prabhupada mentioned that that in Dwarka there's the famous pastime where a Brahman lost would continuously lose his sons, and then he came and chastised the king that you are not doing your duty. You're supposed to protect your citizens. You're not protecting. So that's the duty of the king, to protect the citizen. So as the protector of the citizens, Maharaj Parikshit is glorified as Arjun, that he will be as good as Arjun. And Prabhupada said there were two Arjuns in the dynasty of the Purus. One is Kartavirya Arjun, who is a distant ancestor appearing in Satyug, who was killed by Parshuram. And the second, of course, is the grandfather, Arjun, who is also famous as a warrior. And Prabhupada in the purport gives a brief history of the Pandav Arjun. Then amongst things that cannot be resisted, fire is the most formidable. Once the fire starts, it's very difficult to control it. And the ocean is so vast and mighty that it is impossible to surpass it in size and strength. So Parikshit Maharaj as a warrior is compared to fire as irresistible and ocean as unsurpassable. Okay, next verse. Mrigendreva vikranto nishevya himavaneva titikshurva sudeva sau sahisnu pitara viva. The child will be as strong as a lion and as worthy a shelter as the Himalaya mountains. He will be forbearing like the earth and as tolerant as his parents. So, so Prabhupada mentioned in the purport that a lion never fails in the chase of an animal. Similarly, the head of the state should never fail in chasing an enemy. And then he also says that a king should always give shelter to everyone, just like the Himalayas. Both the materialist and the spiritualist can take advantage of the great shelter of the Himalayas. So in terms of tolerance, it is said that he is tolerant as his parents. So the Brahmanas say that he will be as forbearing like the earth. So Mother Earth is the emblem of tolerance, and then giving shelter and even nourishing those that harm her and ravish her. So in that way, Parikshit Maharaj will be tolerant. And then it says Pitra Viva. So Pitra Viva, Prabhupada translates like his parents. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur translates like parents in general. So, but the same point is made that so Parikshit Maharaj's parents are not that famous, Abhimanyu and Uttara, but parents also point to the grandparents. And the Pandavas were very famous for their tolerance. So much injustice done against them, and they tolerated it. And generally, so Vishwanath Chakravarti, generally speaking, parents are very tolerant towards their children. That's the nature of tolerance. They are titikshuha and sahishnu. That they are self-control, patience, and restraint and tolerance. Next verse. Pitama sama samye prasade girishopamaha ashraya sarva bhutanam yatha devo ramashrayah. This child will be like his grandfather Yudhishthir or Brahma in equanimity of mind. He will be munificent like the Lord of Kailash hill, Shiva. And he will be the resort of everyone like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, who is even the shelter of the goddess of fortune. So the other quality now that's been glorified is the equanimity of mind. So Prabhupada in the purport mentions that mental equanimity refers both to Maharaj Yudhishthir and Brahma. So the word that they use is Pitama. So Pitama is grandfather, which points to Maharaj Yudhishthir, and Pitama is the general term that is also points to Lord Brahma. So Prabhupada says, according to Sridhar Swami, the grandfather referred to is as Brahma, but according to Vishwanath Chakravarti, the grandfather is Maharaj Yudhishthir. In both cases, the comparison is equally good because both of them are recognized representatives of the Supreme Lord, and thus both of them have to maintain mental equanimity while engaged in welfare work for the living beings. And in terms of munificence, he is compared to Lord Shiva. Prabhupada said Lord Shiva is a celebrated demigod who awards gifts to beggars. His name is therefore Ashutosh, or one who is pleased very easily. Then Prabhupada also uses this as a preaching point because he's mentioned that he will be the resort of everyone like the Supreme Personality of God and Narayan, who is even the shelter of the goddess of fortune. So this point he also made earlier on, that Lakshmi Devi, she is constantly in the shelter of Lord Vishnu. So those who want wealth are advised to go to Lord Vishnu because they automatically get the permanent association of Lakshmi Devi. But Lakshmi Devi in the more material perspective is Chanchal, and she will come and go, but when she comes with her husband, she is sthir. Just like Lord Vishnu stays, as long as Lord Vishnu stays, she will stay also. Okay, next verse, 24. Sarva Sadguna Mahatmaya Esha Krishnam Anuvartataha Ranti Devi Budvaro Yayati Rivadharmakaha. This child will be almost as good as Lord Krishna by following in his footsteps. In magnanimity, he will become as great as King Ranti Dev. And in religion, he will be like Maharaj Yayati. So, Jiva Goswami says that in Krama Sandarbha, that the sages are saying that he will be as good as Krishna. They are saying this to astonish people in general. And the reason he will be as good as Krishna is because he will follow in the footsteps. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, in this verse, one subject of comparison is made for all good qualities. Sarva Satguna Mahatmaya, Esha Krishna. So they have given many specific qualities. Now they are saying there are many other qualities, too many qualities for us to enumerate. So we'll summarize it and we'll say that he is going to be as good as Krishna. How is going to be as good as Krishna? Through the process of bhakti. So following the footsteps of Krishna does not mean imitating Krishna. Following the footsteps means that following the path that has been given by Krishna, which is the path of bhakti. And then as we know, that through the path of bhakti, when the devotees, they associate closely with Krishna, just like iron and fire, they acquire the qualities of fire. So that is why the child will have qualities almost as good as Lord Krishna by following in his footsteps. And then two great personalities are maintained, Rantidev. Rantidev is famous for his charity. So we know that pastime that he was fasting for a long time, and then when he began to eat, then different people came and took away his food and his water, and he happily kept giving away everything. And then Maharaj Yayati is an ancestor, and he was famous for his understanding and practice of religious principles. Next verse, and after this we'll stop. Bali samaha Krishne prarad iva sadgraha ahartaishu ashvamedhanam vriddhanam paryupasakaha. The child will be like Bali Maharaj in patience, a staunch devotee of Lord Krishna like Prahlad Maharaj, a performer of many Ashwamedha horse sacrifices, and a follower of old and experienced men. So you notice now that the mood of the Brahmanas has now become very Krishna-centric. Now, even the greater personalities that were being described later on were devotees of Krishna, but now they're focusing on devotees who are famous for their relationship with Krishna. So he's saying that patient like Bali Maharaj. Why is Bali Maharaj patient? Because despite the fact he gave everything to Krishna, Krishna still punished him. But he did not lose patience. He said, okay, you want to send me to the hellish planets, to Sutal, fine. I will go there. You want me to stay over here, there, for full one yuga cycle? I will stay over there. So that quality of patience in relationship to Krishna, and a staunch devotee like Prahlad Maharaj, unshakable, and a follower of old and experienced men. So the reason they put this is to show that all this will not affect the equilibrium of Maharaj Parikshit. That he will not become proud, that I am such a great devotee, I am like Ranti Dev and Yayati and Ram, so don't tell me what to do. Despite all these good qualities, he will be humble. So he will be the follower of old and experienced men, which means that he will inquire from them and he will take instructions from them. So this verse it ends with the qualities, the glorification of qualities. So the Brahmanas begin by describing the qualities of Parikshit Maharaj. In the next set of verses, they will describe his activities, and then they will describe his death. So just to summarize, there were 18 qualities that were glorified of Parikshit Maharaj. I'll quickly go over them. In maintaining praja, he will be like King Ikshvaku, upholding promise like Lord Ram, charitable like King Shibi, protector of the surrendered like King Shibi. He will expand the fame of his dynasty like Emperor Bharat. He will be a great warrior like Arjun, irresistible like fire, unsurpassable like ocean. He will be strong like a lion. He will provide shelter to all like the Himalayas. In terms of equanimity of mind, he will be like Maharaj Yudhishthira or Lord Brahma. He will be munificent like Lord Shiva. He will be the resort of everyone like Lord Vishnu. He will be the abode of all good qualities like Shri Krishna. He will be magnanimous like Ranti Dev, upholding religious principles like Maharaj Yayati, maintaining woes and patience like Bali Maharaj, and staunch devotee, Sadgraha like Prahlad Maharaj. So many qualities are glorified, but the last quality, Sadgraha, is considered to be the root quality. Sad means eternal truth, which means Krishna. So Sadgraha means that he will acquire the qualities of Krishna. So that's like the superset. And he places this at the last to say that there are many other qualities. But just know that like Krishna has infinite good qualities, being a staunch follower of Krishna, Parikshit Maharaj will also have innumerable low qualities. But he will always remain submissive and humble. Praddhanam Paryupaksha. And he will follow in their, he will take advice from them and follow their instructions, and will be famous for performing many Ashwamedha sacrifices. So I'm going to stop over here and see if there is any discussion.
Two more qualities, Prabhuji, like tolerant like his parents and forbearing like her. I think those two were also mentioned.
That is true. That is true.
And Prabhuji, I'm just wondering, like, do we know of like previous birth and activities of Parikshit, or like who he was, or who he is in his eternal form, eternal original form?
It's a very good question. I was trying to look for it, but I could not find anywhere. So it's definitely not given in the Bhagavatam, of course. The only other place where it would be given is the Harivamsh Puran. And um, uh, I don't have an electronic copy of it. Otherwise, I could have searched it. I have the book, but it'll take me a while. But it's a note I made to myself to find out more about the antecedents of Maharaj Parikshit. And if any of you find, then please feel free to share. Any other questions, comments?
What is Harivansh Puran, Prabhuji?
Harivansh Puran is it's a kila to the Bhagavatam. So basically, the Harivamsh Puran contains. It begins with a genealogical description of the family of Krishna. It begins all the way from Brahma and talks in details about the various family members, and then it talks about the major incidents that happens. So a lot of the incidents that are described in the Bhagavatam are described in further details in Harivamsh Puran with um, um, with more with more insight into the personalities, the previous lives, etc. So it's in the category of a Puran. Like Bhagavatam is a Mahapuran because it talks about the 10 subjects. Harivansh Puran, it focuses very much on the action and the pastimes of the personalities that appear in the Bhagavad. So it's generally considered to be Kila or an appendix to the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, if you find something on, please let us know.
Yes, definitely. Even I'm curious about it. There are some. I mean, I did find some, but I don't want to share because I haven't been able to verify them. Some of the claims are kind of, uh, there are a lot of Puranas. Some of the Puranas are tamasic also, so they make all kinds of claims. But I'm just waiting to have some time to study to search for it in Harivamsha. I mean, I have the book, like I said, there's a 10-volume Puran. I have the books with me. So when I get around to studying them, and if I find it, I'll share it with you.
Is it by ISKCON? The book is published, or is it
Not by ISKCON, no. It's so I think the Sanskrit editor is one who worked in ISKCON. I forget his name, but he worked a lot in ISKCON, but he is not 100% ISKCON from what I understand. But what he gives is a translation. He does not do any commentary. He just translates from Sanskrit to English. Okay, anything else? Okay, if not, then we'll end over here. Thank you very much. Mamcha Vayascha Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitanam Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrind Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanand, Hari Hari Bol, Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.